This weekend, 17-year-old Nabra Hassanin was abducted and murdered after leaving a mosque early in the morning. And now, to add insult to injury, just several days after that happened, a memorial was established for Nabra, and someone went this morning and set it on fire. DC police confirmed to the Daily News that officers were called Wednesday morning after fire was set to the memorial at a fountain. A spokeswoman said that Jonathan Solomon, a 24-year-old from South Carolina, had been arrested just after 10 a.m. and added that at this time, the incident does not appear to be motivated by bias.
Come on.
And so I reached out to the police department to try to find out if, they keep saying South Carolina, did this person travel to there, and I have not been able to have it been confirmed at this point. But I would argue that regardless of whether he lived in that area or he traveled expressly to set fire to it, there's some bias involved in that.
Yeah.
Didn't accidentally, he wasn't just looking to start a fire and the memorial was there.
So in the case of the original death of Hassanin in this case, there's some dispute as to why it happened. So originally, unsurprisingly, people thought it was a hate crime because they were on their way to a mosque. They were wearing headscarves, at least certainly Nabra was. And so given the climate in America, people made the reasonable assumption that it was related to a hate crime, which is, there's a couple of them that were in the news very, very recently.
Very recently, yes.
Now, authorities say that might not be the case, that it might have been road rage. Now, it's a weird kind of road rage because he chased them with a baseball bat. It seemed like they weren't in the car, so I don't know why he was raging.
No, they had been walking home from walking to the mosque from an IHOP. He had either been driving, it's not immediately clear if he was parked and they were nearby. They said that he pulled over onto, I believe, the sidewalk. So he had either been driving or they passed him and he drove to catch up, something like that. Yeah. And had an argument, came out with a metal baseball bat.
And abducted her. And then
after hitting her, yeah.
Yeah, and then God knows what happened afterwards. I'm afraid to find out.
They're still investigating.
Yeah, and her body was found later in the day in a nearby pond. So either way, second-degree murder is the charge, and they're investigating him, and hopefully he'll be punished to the maximum extent. Now
thankfully they caught him very quickly.
Yeah, that's right. Great job by the authorities in finding him. Now turning to burning down a memorial. Who accidentally burns down a memorial or burns down a memorial for someone, but it doesn't have anything to do with the memorial?
It doesn't have anything to do with any bias.
Like what? So somebody drove from South Carolina to do a random act of, is a pyro and was like, I don't like burning things in South Carolina. I want to drive all the way over here.
It's the first flammable thing he saw on the news.
Yeah. So that seems super weird to me. In fact, if it's the same authorities, who again, credit to them for catching them, telling me that the memorial being burned down is coincidence, and they're also telling me that their initial crime is also a coincidence.
Yeah.
It makes me question whether their initial crime was actually a coincidence or road rage, or if it was a hate crime.
It's a whole bunch of coincidences, apparently.
That's right. So look, you got to investigate that stuff and find out, and as this stuff is fresh, there'll be a lot of miscommunication. Things will settle down, and hopefully we'll get some real answers. But it would be very, very surprising if a memorial to this Muslim girl who was killed was burned down for anything other than that it was a memorial to a Muslim woman who, who else would burn down a memorial to anyone else?
To anyone. Yeah, regardless of what drove the initial crime, this guy seems to have had some sort of bias. Yeah. And I guess just because of what's been happening internationally in the past couple weeks, it bothers me. It should bother everyone. Remember, Donald Trump tried to spread that myth that after 9/11 there were Muslims on the rooftops cheering. This idea that terrible act happens, people die, and some group takes joy in that. It didn't actually happen, but he was spreading that idea. And here you have this girl killed. Some people apparently are fans of that. They like it. There were the Muslim worshippers leaving in London that were driven down by the guy in the van trying to kill as many Muslims as possible. And the son of the owner of the van company says he wishes that they had rented him a tank or a steamroller instead, glorifying the fact that the killing happened. There's Facebook pages filled with positive comments after events like this happen, and for some reason that's not supposed to be a problem. That's just it's just a couple of bad seeds. We're not supposed to be disturbed by the fact that when you kill Muslims, people are allowed to cheer. They're allowed to be happy. They're allowed to call for more violence, and we're not supposed to be disturbed about that.
John, those are just lone wolves. And
just tons of lone wolves collecting together and talking about how awesome killing Muslims is.
Yeah, and remember, Islam is dangerous and violent. So that's why you should set their memorials on fire.
Exactly.
And if you're in London, you should run them over with a truck because they're dangerous and violent.
That's what I'm learning.
Or perhaps it could be that extremists on both sides are dangerous and violent because they're extremists and fundamentalists. And that what's driving the violence is the extremism and not whether they happen to be Christian or Muslim, white, or anything else.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy talk. Let's go back to doing the thing we're really good at, picking a minority and blaming them for all the problems, and then feeling really good about ourselves. And then if that minority is attacked, saying, I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, and people are just so scared now that they will, like the idea, so I read, there was an analysis that said the chance that you'll be killed in a terror attack committed by a refugee is 1 in, I believe it was 3.4 billion a year. But a random 17-year-old girl deserves to die. The leap that it takes mentally to get to that point, and this is not a rare leap. I mean, maybe not a lot of people will act on it. Maybe not a lot of people will kill Nabra. Maybe not a lot of people will set her memorial on fire. But for everyone who does one of those two things, there are a lot of people who are happy that it's happening, and that is incredibly disturbing. Thankfully, a Launch Good page was set up for Nabra's family, who's still in the very beginning of their grieving, and it's raised more than $314,000 for them as of early Wednesday afternoon.
Never gonna bring their daughter back. It's tragic any way you slice it. Young Turks now has over 6 billion lifetime views. You know who did that? You did that. We're now larger than CNN, ABC, you name a news network online, we're larger than them. And you built all that as everyone scoffed and didn't believe. And here we are, guys, thanks to you. Build independent media together with us at tytnetwork.com/join.